I think what gets taken away from that song is her voice, is the essence of her voice, which is really beautiful. And people can connect to that who are not necessarily in the spiritual space. So when they're listening to these spiritual lyrics and these things that are kind of like up leveling their being, and they're understanding on a cellular level, hey, I am a body of cells, and listening to these type of affirmations with this tone is actually putting my state in a different vibrational state. And that's going to affect my life. I think that those who picked up on that intention and who picked up on that vibe really can connect to it. And I think that a lot of people and more people are connecting. In fact, from when we're filming this and recording this podcast, yesterday that track had more plays than it did any other day. And it just keeps growing.
You're listening to the Freio Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Hi, I'm Nate Stein. I also go by Equanimous. That's my artist name. It's what I'm better known for. And I make blissful bass music.
Nice. Cool. Well, tell me a little bit about your journey into music in your early days. Maybe if you want to start out with the first musical memory, or maybe the first time you picked up an instrument.
So, I was told that my parents would actually bring me to different concerts when I was in the womb. And so I don't actually remember my first kind of musical experience because it happened at a very, very early age. I started playing drums and I was banging on trees and stuff with sticks when I was like 1 and 2, honestly. My family was musical somewhat. My grandfather was the most musical. He had kind of written a symphony and was in that space a little bit. After being a doctor. And so my early childhood was very, very proactive musically. I had rhythm at an early age. I think because of going to shows, I remember when I was like 2 or 3, I played with a group called the Bag Boys in Massachusetts. I was their drummer as like a 3-year-old. Is a fun thing. I was definitely a YouTube baby before there was YouTube, that kind of thing. There's actually some footage of me playing that. It's pretty fun to watch. And yeah, that was kind of my early musical first moments. I definitely remember being obsessed with Paul Simon Graceland, that live album that he had. And, or I guess it was like a live video, a concert based on the album Graceland. But that was a really early influence. So one of my first memories would be that, I would say.
Cool. And when was the first time, you mentioned like sticks on trees, but when was the first time you started maybe taking it a little bit more seriously? Maybe it was that early band, or starting to learn about like formatting the music.
Yeah. Well, I was very musical early, and then I got into basketball actually as a kid. So that kind of took a presence, whatever the word is that I'm looking for there. Clearly English was not one.
Precedent. Yeah, there we go.
So basketball. And then I remember probably when I was like 12, I started to really, I think I might've started taking piano lessons then, or guitar lessons. I had taken piano lessons maybe for like 2 or 3 months, couldn't read music, didn't like it, just ended up teaching myself. I did take guitar lessons around that time. I remember I was in 5th grade. So whatever I was in 5th grade, maybe even 4th grade, 5th grade, whenever that was, I think it was around 12. No, you know what? I must have been like 10. Anyways, I was around 10. I started playing guitar. And from that, I was able to start like forming songs. I used to listen to, Blink 182 and the Goo Goo Dolls and all those fun 90s, slightly emo-ish bands. And, that I was like, oh, song structure. And so then I started writing my own music, and I've been writing my own songs since basically that age.
Nice. How did you first approach it? You mentioned guitar. But how'd you write your music? Did you record it? What kind of tools or hacks did you start out with?
Yeah. You know, definitely guitar, some piano. I learned GarageBand, the computer program, at a very early age. I was in an electronic music course in high school. It was a public high school that taught electronic music. I felt very grateful.
Yeah.
And I took it all years. And in middle school, I took it in middle school too. So I was definitely on like I was literally recording my own music at 14 on these programs as they were first starting to come out too. I didn't even get into Logic until Logic came out. So I started Logic like when Logic came out.
What year was that, out of curiosity?
Let's see.
Roughly.
I mean, I can't say exactly when Logic came out.
Okay.
But I can tell you that I started it around 2004, maybe 2005.
Okay.
So I'd be curious. Does your podcast have a Jamie like in Joe Rogan where you can say
yeah, and like get the answer? No, I've got a Siri over my shoulder,
I'd be curious
Google.
to know when Logic actually came out too. But yeah, around 2005. I didn't really start like getting good at it though until 2007. Is when I started getting good at Logic, and I remember when it came out. It was like, I think at least I do. It was new and fun and exciting. That at that time that we were using the Macs that had like the color in the back. You know?
Oh yeah, the cool rounded ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Those were awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was great though. I mean, each kid got their own keyboard in class, and I ended up kind of teaching the class my last year as like a TA because I did it so much. But yeah, that was like the first. Middle school, high school was the first time I really started producing music.
That's awesome. Those computers bring back so many memories. I was in elementary school when those came out, and part of the computer lab had those computers, and of course it's just a mad dash to the coolest color, your preferred color.
I remember that.
Elbowing out all the other kids. Anyways, good times.
Great times. Oh yeah.
So GarageBand. I also started on GarageBand, and what insights did you have, or what kind of kept you around to wait and learn Logic and dive in deeper? What were some of the like mind-blowing aspects of it?
I think I was just following like what I could do. Oh, I can't do this in GarageBand. I can't do this in Logic. I got to use Logic, just listening to the advice of people, I guess. Seeing, I think, what it was is like Logic just had better sounds. And so, GarageBand sounds are like GarageBand sounds. Everybody knows those, that fake acoustic guitar that everyone knows. It's a GarageBand sound. Logic sounds you can kind of get away with. I still use Logic sounds in my songs today. Some producers would be like, isn't that a Logic sound? But I like them. I like a lot of them. I've been able to kind of edit them too. To my liking where you wouldn't really notice, but some you still would. So I think actually the sounds kind of pushed me along that realm. And, I use Ableton as well now sometimes, but still when I produce by myself, I'll still use Logic. I like Logic a lot. Ableton I'll use when I'm kind of working with others. But yeah, it was just like the sounds, the idea that I could get all these new and different sounds that I didn't know. I think the sampler too was very helpful in Logic. Me recording like cool, like, my voice maybe going like or whatever, and then like and like having to be able to play that on the keyboard is kind of a cool thing. And that's pretty much what drove that, I would say.
Nice. And to dive into that particular technique for somebody who might not know, who does use Logic, what tools, what plugins or VSTs do you have to load for that?
Yeah, I mean, we could go down we could literally talk for hours about this. But I'll just say, I guess the one that I just brought up right now is a sampler. I think it's an EX23 is what it's called. It just comes with Logic, but it's a sampler. And so like, here's how I might use that, right? If I like am recording, and like one of those sounds is cool. I like did that just like or like a whatever, some funny noises. And then I like pick of one of those sounds. I can put it in a keyboard in their sampler and play it. So let's say I just picked a noise like, you know, like doo or whatever. I could literally play on the keyboard doo 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 or whatever that I've recorded there. And so there's or like for beatbox stuff, you know, you're like a boom 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 or whatever. And I get each one of those sounds on the keyboard, and then I can like play it boom 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 boom. You know,
nice.
For those who are just listening, I'm using my finger right now to make those notes.
or like a beat pad or a drum.
Yeah, beat pad, whatever. Oh yeah, you
drum triggers if you wanted.
Yeah. So that's one. I mean, I love their ES2 synth. You can make some really great tones with that. I've definitely explored that quite a lot. I'm not as like the other kind of VST synths that either come with it or that I've got, you know, everyone has their preferences. I really like the Labs piano. I could name a bunch. To be honest though, I've been actually lately shifting away from those and just shifting more and more to having as many of the sounds be organic as possible. So really just like a lot more vocal tones, experimenting more with my voice, experimenting more with instruments. And, you know, maybe we record like a hand pan and then make it into a synth or something, you know, like different ways of getting new sounds, I think is kind of what I'm focused on now. I know that a lot of producers right now are using Splice. So it's actually, I feel like and Splice, for those who don't know, Splice is a massive library of just tons of sounds, basically. Sounds, loops, samples, whatever, that you can basically, you pay like monthly to be able to use any of them in your music. And so that's very popular. I actually just came out with a sample pack myself, an Equanimous sample pack, which you can get on Gravitas. But yeah, I would say that like, that's kind of where things have also been moving towards, not necessarily for me, but just in general. And so like, it's kind of balancing out this like sample versus VST thing versus what do you use versus what do you use. But it's a huge, I wish I could answer the question better, but there's so much, you know.
Fair. And I appreciate you bringing up a few of those items that you did. I do find it interesting. I want to dive into it just a little bit more. First of all, you said that organic sounds, and is it fair to say when you speak of organic sounds that you are talking about acoustic sounds or sounds that actually would hit your ear that are not electronic and that you're recording those? Is that what you mean when you say organic?
Yes. Although I will say a lot of sort of actually, because a lot of organic sounds can also be played on the keyboard. Like if I go, okay, just that one sound is clearly an organic sound. That's like as organic as you can get. I'm making it with my mouth, right? And so if I record that one and I put it into a MIDI keyboard where the middle note, let's say C, the middle note is, and the next note is, and you keep going on the piano, even though you're playing that electronically, because its origin is organic, I would definitely, without a doubt, call that an organic sound.
Cool.
And so and sometimes maybe you'll hear like a voice and you hear these vocal chops like, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. That to me is also an organic sound. It's just an organic
Chopped
sound
up.
that's been processed.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, that's where I feel like I personally am moving towards more of just having the origin be organic, as opposed to like what I would not say is a necessarily organic sound would be like, even like a modular synthesizer creating a sound wave. Yes, technically it's organic, but still anything that's digital like that, even analog in the sense of, you know, obviously a voice is analog, but analog in the sense of like, yeah, like an analog synth where it's creating its own tones. I still would maybe view that as not necessarily organic because you don't need a human to do it. I guess maybe that's my definition of being organic is you need a human to produce the sound. Like a guitar, well, I guess then you could say no, but a robot can play a guitar. That's still organic. So,
well, then we're going to get into simulation theory pretty soon.
Then it's too much, but I think that answers the question.
Okay, cool. So it's interesting that you don't pull from Splice, but you're putting out your own packs. Now you said it's on Gravitas, a different platform.
Gravitas, yeah.
But
which I think eventually it'll be on Splice.
Yeah.
We're just taking the approach of direct first before we.
But that's kind of a atypical, I'll put it that way,
Sure.
avenue of putting out music or sounds. You are putting out tools for other musicians to make music.
Yeah, and that's not something that I'm it's not something that I have been necessarily prioritizing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a side thing that I thought oh, this could be fun. I'm good at making fun noises.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I can play a bunch of instruments. Let's do a sample pack for other people to enjoy. So that was kind of like a side fun thing, not really and having the support of Gravitas. I mean, they're so great. Gravitas is amazing. Just as far as being a supportive team, I've released an album with them too, even though I have my own label, but they're just great. I love working with them. So they were kind of hey, do you want to do this? I was like, yeah. And it just, it felt like an easy, fun thing to do. It did take longer than I thought it would, but yeah, it's something that we did.
Yeah,
it's just
for sure.
Kind of one of the things.
I get that it's not that's the goal, but it's an interesting byproduct of the work that you do. Anyways, you're creating these things. Might as well leverage them in a different way.
Yes.
Cool. So when did you kind of start making music under your current name, and where did that transition happen to where you kind of honed in your craft?
Sure. I've been in different projects. I was in a project in college that was kind of more pop-like, which is a whole other thing. I was in bands. I was in a group that toured in the Bay a little bit, but nothing had really stuck in that. I kept on going back and forth in between this live band thing and DJ thing. Or not DJ, but electronic, I guess. And Equanimous, I think, did a really good job of balancing the two. And I started being Equanimous in 2016, late 2016. And yeah, it kind of just happened. It was all right, I knew I wanted to start something. I didn't know what I want to call it. I had just been through a silent meditation where I learned the word Equanimous, and I really love that word, and I wanted to spread it. And I didn't think of calling myself it, but someone, when I was explaining what equanimity was and being Equanimous, a friend of mine, when I was traveling around in Hawaii, just started calling me that. He was like, Equanimous, and he would say it like that. And it kind of stuck. I guess I liked it. I was like, okay, I can be this. And it later really resonated because I realized that being Equanimous, having equanimity has always been a goal of mine, because growing up, I've been a very impulsive person. So, having the antidote to impulsivity be equanimity was the perfect thing for me. It's oh, if I can be Equanimous, I'm the best version of myself. I might as well take that on. I might as well be this. It's something that I strive for anyways. And a lot of people don't even know this word. So just by me being Equanimous, if I am going to have the success that I imagine for myself, all these people are going to know this word. That's going to be a great gift to the universe. And so I kind of in my own way, just wanted to check, make sure I had permission, make sure I could do this, make sure it was me, blah, 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 all these things on a more spiritual level. And it's just kind of stuck. It made sense. And that's how I became Equanimous.
That's great. Now, talk to me a little bit about the antidote of what you had mentioned. I don't know your early struggles. As much as you want to share, you're welcome to. But how do you see the music in a way helping align your best self?
Yeah. Well, before I go into the antidote, just to touch on the music thing, I always, I think it's great when artists are going through a hard time and they're feeling emotional and they transition that into a song and it ends up touching others and they're very helpful. And there's also something to be said for like being in a high vibrational state and making music from that state to then spread that high vibration, you know, and hoping it translates to the communication of the music or the sound. Although I've used a little bit of both in terms of the Equanimous sound, I'm really more focused on just kind of like being a high vibe being, like vibrating on what they would say is high vibes. And then from that space, creating from it, and then allowing others to feel that, and just kind of like calling in more of that transformational growth, up-leveling, evolution, abundance, love, bliss, joy, all that. Health, high vibes. And so that's kind of part of what my Equanimous brand is, you could say, is being able to be equanimous, right? Because being equanimous is not just about, and for those who don't know, to be equanimous means to be non-reactive, to be even-minded, to be balanced.
Now, full disclosure, I've been butchering this word since before I knew you. Okay. If you say it correctly, I've always been saying equanimous.
Yeah, no, it's definitely Equanimous. Yeah. And you can actually hear in Goenka's teachings, Goenka is kind of the more mainstream character that says it. He says, be equanimous.
Okay, you know? Good. Well, all right. That's off my back. And
you got
now
it.
It's clarified for anybody out there who also butchers it.
And trust me, there have been plenty of people who have. I've got Equanimous too, and some weird ones. But yeah, it's definitely an Equanimous, but it's Equanimous, coming from equanimity, which means to be balanced in that way. And so one of the kind of teachings of equanimity is to be non-reactive, to not just fear, which one would think, okay, if I'm going to be non-reactive, their brain immediately thinks like, I'm going to be non-reactive towards fear, because then if they're non-reactive towards fear, the fear can come in, it lives its life, it teaches whatever it needs to, and then it leaves. And you don't have to be reacting to it, so you don't create from that fear. Same principle applies to excitement. If you feel a lot of excitement and love and all these amazing feelings, of course, it's great to share that and act off that, because then other people can feel it. But really, if you're being equanimous, you're being equally non-reactive to both excitement and fear. Partly why I'm named my whole thing and my handle is Equanimous Love, because my thing is to always be equanimous with love. And so part of being equanimous is the ability to receive, I guess you could say, if you're a more spiritual person, you say codes or downloads, whatever, you'd say to receive a certain vibration of being able to have an immense amount of excitement, love, whatever it is. And then so from that place is where I like to create musically. So I want to answer that part of the question. And the other part of the question you asked was about the antidote, which has been an antidote for me, mainly through meditation and what I call, I guess I don't have a name for it. Maybe it's active meditation. I don't know. It's whatever. It's when you're talking to someone, but you're also aware of your body internally. So you're like meditating while you're in experience. That is a very common type of meditation for me. Anyways, I embody that through the vibration of equanimity. But before, when I grew up, I was not this way at all. I mean, I lived in my mind, like literally like a lot of humans do. I was identified with my mind. I even had a song called I Am My Mind. I had so many thoughts going up there. I was aware of so many thoughts happening up there. Once I started to eliminate pesticides and started eating healthy and all those things, it went away. And I do very strongly feel like certain people who overthink and things like this can be healed mainly with meditation and food. But I'm not going to talk about that right now, unless you want me to later on. But
it's gold. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, we can get there. Great. Yeah, I'm all organic, all that stuff. Anyways, but I will say that I was growing up extremely impulsive in the sense that if I was very uncomfortable with pain, I was uncomfortable with fear. I would act off fear to make myself feel better, as a lot of humans do. I, was very obsessed with sex, with gambling, with, I was in a fraternity. I drank alcohol a lot. I don't drink alcohol at all now. So I was just like in a different lifestyle of like a little bit more hedonistic and just being impulsive and like not, and really not making decisions from my heart, but making decisions from like what felt good to probably like my system and my gut and my brain, but I wasn't listening to it from a place of like authentic, this is who I am. I was listening to it from like a place of like, what's going to feel good in this moment kind of thing. And it created a lot of impulsivity, which of course equanimity is not. And so I kind of like had a whole path of like coming to terms with and really like, you know, getting better about that stuff. And I feel like then as I became equanimous, it was like really my initiation into not just letting that go, but like being this new thing, which the letting go process still occurred. And then, you know, eventually over time, I kind of became into who I am now, which of course I'm still growing and being and all the things. And I also do want to acknowledge that I am much different now than how I used to be.
Nice. Well, I think it's so important and worth circling back over the concept that you had of aligning yourself with something that meant something to you, and that was striving. Because I think it's so easy to just pick a name out of the hat for, you know, to brand yourself as an artist. And if you don't align with it, you're going to have to be calling yourself whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
So
I was
it's like an internal conversation. Keep going.
I was very close to the Chainsmokers growing up. And
boom, there's a great example. I was trying to think of one.
Yeah, and they do not like that they're the Chainsmokers anymore, but they have to be the Chainsmokers. I mean, they're the highest DJs in the world. They have to continue that brand. But it's funny, they actually started a movie production company called Kick the Habit. So I like that they kind of like took, you know, their like thing that was whatever, and they kind of like
turned it. Yeah, that's great. Well, I think it's so important, the mental conversation that you have with yourself and thinking. I'm studying philosophy. So you're talking about being very, very Descartes oriented, you know, I think, therefore I am, you know, being stuck in your mind and not being an observer of your thoughts, but being your thoughts, which is a big difference. And especially when you're, you know, promoting yourself. Yeah, I'm a chain smoker. Yeah, I'm part of the Chainsmokers. You know, it's like,
I wasn't part of the Chainsmokers.
Yeah, I know.
No, okay. But I get
the concept of just trying to align yourself with a positive word.
Exactly.
That's all. Exactly. Cool. Well, transitioning back to your music.
Yeah.
I've noticed that you've got so many different artists that you work with, and I think that is a testament. Clearly, without, you know, working with you myself, it's a testament of your ability to collaborate and willingness to be open to new ideas and to take in others' creativity and embrace that. So just to illustrate the point for some people listening, but it's not just one song, what I want to point out. Like, you've got EPs that you make with other people, which is pretty cool. So you got Cloud Waves and Ocean and Let It All Flow. Those are all different EPs that each and every track was made with the same artist, you know, different for each EP. Yeah. Obviously, you're the common denominator with those, but how does it work in your mind, and how are you able to create such a fruitful collaboration session? You know, it's hard enough to get one song together, let alone an EP.
Right. Yeah, I like collaborations a lot. You know, it helps artists. It helps their growth. It helps in many ways the actual song, you know. The way that I kind of look at it, and by the way, so many people are collaborating. It's just that things are marketed as if they're not. Mm-hmm. You know, like, for example, a mainstream song that we hear on the radio, the majority of them works in the way where you've got a kind of like an executive producer, and that executive producer will have their artists, will have their songwriters, and will have their producer. and the executive producer will say like, hey, they'll get pitched these songs, which are written by someone else and for their artists. And it's like, oh, hey, Justin Bieber, you want to go on, you like this song? What if we get X and X to produce it and you just sing it? Great. And so that's like a full collaboration of multiple artists that would, be listed, but then it's either just Bieber listed or the producer he worked with that's listed. So this is how a lot of music is being made. It's just that
look at the credits.
I like to credit everybody, because they're doing just as much as I am, and so I know, like, and also a lot of producers, they make their own thing, blah blah. I definitely take a more traditional approach. I mean, I do. It's all different. Okay, my last album, Vibration. I'll compare my last two albums. Okay. My last album, Vibration, I made all the music. I had a couple of features on there. I did the mixing, and then I got someone else, Geometry, to come in and do like another round of mixing on it. He did the more kind of in-depth one because he's better than I am at that. So I wanted him to do it because it's going to make the songs better. You know what I mean? And then I had my mastering engineer master it. Guild Live, great. Cody Ekstrom, excellent mastering engineer. That would be one way where like my name is the only one on it. And I feel like I did the bulk of it. The album before, Merging Elements, every track has a different producer on it. Okay. Some of those I went to the studio, we created together, we did it all together. They were the engineer, they send it back to me, we would go back and forth, whatever. Some of them I recorded with a vocalist and then I just sent it off to another producer to take our ideas and make more, mixed and all that and do a production job on that. So they're all different. But, ultimately, so different ways of doing things. Ultimately, I think that what I was like holding in my space was the song. And however we were going to get there to the song being the best it could be, I would do it. Even with remixes now, when people sometimes will hire me to do a remix or whatever, if I vibe with it, I'll like do the remix and then I'll send it to a mixing engineer to like touch up on. And sometimes I might put that engineer as a second artist because they've added, more than just the mixing, and I want to credit them. A lot of time, like with what you're referring to, like with these, like Cloud Waves I did with Knock Knock, basically with Cloud Waves, I had some ideas. Hey, what do you think of these 10 ideas? He's like, all right, I like these 5. Great. Why don't you take them and run with them? He runs with them. Then he came out to where I was and we got in the studio for a couple of days and finished it. Like that type of vibe. With Ocean, I did with Skyzia, that EP. We were living together at the time. So we kind of just like went in, and for that, there were certain things where like maybe, and this is what's happening more often is like, I'm playing more of the actual instruments, like recording them because I'm, and then like a multi-instrumentalist. And then someone like Skyzia, who is a phenomenal sound design engineer, kind of goes in and he really like spends a lot of time tweaking around the different sounds. So doing stuff like that has been a really nice pairing. I have another EP coming out at the very end of the year with Stoic, which I am so excited for because he specifically likes when musicians come in there and lay down a bunch of stuff and then he gets to get all gritty on the computer. And the grittiness on the computer at this point is probably my least favorite part. Maybe not my least favorite. I still enjoy it somewhat, but I used to really love it. Now I've just really enjoyed playing the music. So it just all changes and it's all different. I guess I've just am well practiced at delegation and like, hey, this is what this is going to be. And just really good, clear agreements up front. I've obviously learned from all these collaborations on the back end that I've done too. But yeah, it's something that I love and it's something I believe in. And it's something that I think can make a song better.
Nice. Well, with that in mind, what lessons were some of the key lessons that you've learned? Maybe if you want to share mistakes, you don't have to use names or anything, but what mistakes have you most learned from in the collaboration realm, and what makes a great collaboration?
Sure. So I will say that one thing that always has worked itself out smoothly for the most part is like percentage numbers. People, what in my space at least, I guess, aren't as concerned about a point or two, because the people that I'm working with for the most part are still just kind of like up and coming, you know, like none of these songs that I've made so far, with the exception of one, is like getting, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. There's really only one track I've made that's had that type of success so far. And we had already agreed on percentages up front anyways. So that typically works out. What I have learned, and I started with that because I feel like that's something that people are like afraid of. But for me, at least, it's been relatively smooth as long as you're just a good open person and you talk about it beforehand. What I've learned, though, is that there are certain things that are exceptionally important to talk about beforehand. One of them being placement. So the one issue that I've run into in the past is whose name goes first. Because when you click on a Spotify song and you click on it, it goes to whoever's artist profile is listed first. And if you are in a car and an artist were to show up on the car, it would only be the first artist, which happens more than you'd think. So those are the two main things of why one would want to be a first artist. And that conversation has to happen before any music is done.
Just for clarity, because I haven't never thought about this, so I appreciate you bringing this up. But when you say the first artist gets the play count on Spotify,
they both get the play count.
Oh, okay.
But the first artist, when you click on, like that EP Ocean that you mentioned, when you click on that, it's going to go to Skyzia's artist page, not mine. It'll still be listed on mine, but his is going to be the name that comes first. When you click on the Cloud Waves EP that I did with Knock Knock, my name is going to come first. And so it'll go to my profile.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of about the traffic of exploration of the listener. If they like it, they're going to be led more easily to the first artist.
Right. And sometimes, like, you know, sometimes you don't, like, I very intentionally am not the first artist. You know what I mean? Like for, there's a track that we put out with Banyan on Chill Nation called Ineffable. And they did way more work than I did on that track. Really, like that track, like I made one little idea from another track and he's like, hey, I really like this idea. Can we make a song out of it? So it is the main melody that I wrote. So it does obviously have some weight, but besides that melody, they pretty much did the production around it. I wouldn't want to go first. It wouldn't make sense for me to go first there. It makes way more sense for them to go first. And there's like a very, very synthy lead that they added to it, which I think is cool, but it's not necessarily super on brand for Equanimous. So it wouldn't even make sense for me to be first on that anyways. Another example is I have a new project that I'm releasing called Ghost Beats. I guess it might have already been released at this point, called Ghost Beats. And there is one track I have Ghost Beats and Equanimous. Equanimous, it wouldn't make sense for me to be first on the track because the vibe of the track is not an Equanimous song. It's almost like as if I'm being featured, but I'm still putting my name on there to help grow, get the stats, and because like I did, you know, take part in making it. So that's another example of where I necessarily wouldn't want to be first. However, I'm bringing this up because you said what I've learned, and what I've learned is to talk about this beforehand.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you brought up two great points: percentages, and you called it placement.
Yeah, like where the artist goes.
Yeah.
There's other
What
things
else?
too of like, okay, are we going to release this through a label? We want to do a self-release. Like these are good things to talk about beforehand. Or you can say, hey, we're not sure yet. Let's wait to see what the song is. And that's okay because you've made that agreement beforehand. But it's really not good to assume with these kind of things with collaborations.
So outside of music, what are you into?
Yes. Well, I brought up meditation, which I am into in my own way. Brought up basketball. I love basketball. I play basketball. I watch basketball. It is like a second life for me. I really love basketball. I love movies. I like watching movies. I'm a big movie guy. But yeah, outside of that, I'm pretty heavily work focused. In general, because being in the kind of conscious transformational space, I am into things that go along with that, like cryptocurrency and, living sovereignly. I have my own 508c1a. I am by law a minister. Not that I really practice that much. And when I say that, it's not tied to any religion. I was actually raised a Jew. I was raised Jewish, and very light, very, not orthodox or anything like that. But yeah, just saying that to make it known that it is, even though I say I am by law a minister, it is not like a religious type of minister. It is a more spiritual kind. And I would just say that that kind of all goes into health, and health is extremely important to me. Living an organic lifestyle, I say I'm pesticide free because I do not eat food with pesticides in it. And of course I'll slip up every now and then, but for the most part, I'm pretty good about it. All my clothing is organic. I make sure that when I travel, I always have an organic pillowcase on me so that I don't need to sleep on a material that has potential harmful, cancerous pesticides that would then go into my pores and my skin, especially on my face. It just sounds very disgusting. I don't think I would even be able to sleep on a non-organic pillowcase. If so, I would probably just wear a hood or get like one of my organic pieces of clothing to use. And I would just say that is very important to me, food education. I feel like, a lot of people are concerned about climate change, and I feel like very strongly that the number one, people say the number one problem with climate change is agriculture. And I would agree, but I would say that it is the glyphosate and the pesticides in agriculture. That is why agriculture is the number one problem, because pesticides and poison is basically going into our ground, which then goes through our soil and our system to the rainwater, all these things. So I am a big believer in always eating organic 100% of the time, always wearing organic 100% of the time, and never, ever making exceptions. Not this in moderation thing, more of like a discipline, hey, don't ever do this ever type energy. And being really strong with that. And that feels important to me, especially because the majority of people I feel like can make these shifts, but they're still going to need the in moderation type vibe. And so if I can be inspiration and role model for someone who doesn't do things in moderation like that, just doesn't do it. I don't eat dairy because it clogs the system, especially for a male. For your female, there's different reasons to eat dairy, but especially for a male, I would not want to do that as a male bodied. Sorry. So yeah, I feel strongly about it. You can hear it in my voice too. And it's something that I care about deeply for the planet and for humans.
Are you a vegetarian?
I eat meat. I don't eat dairy ever. I eat meat. I don't eat pig ever. There's certain meat I won't eat. Like I would never eat a pig, right? Pig experiences a ton of fear before it's dying. It's not, I don't feel like pigs are meant to be eaten. I was about to say no judgment if you eat pigs, but the truth is I kind of do judge people who eat pigs, if I'm being honest. But I know that people probably judge me for eating a cow. I'll eat organic grass-fed cow. I will, so everyone has their own things, and people can be judgmental. They don't have to be. as long as they're aware that they're being judgmental, I think. I eat fish, but yeah, for me, it's about just all organic, no dairy, no soy, obviously no sugars, like processed sugars, no blue one, red 5, red 40, yellow 5, none of that stuff. No dextrose, no like corn syrup or any of those kind of corn sugar products like maltodextrin, MSG, all that stuff. I think it's really just about what I don't eat. And I think that's what people should look at, is what they don't eat, rather than they do, because people don't realize that if you can eat organic for 6 days a week and then go have shitty food and eat dairy, and you've just totally negated the 6 days that you've done. And that would be someone being like, but I'm a weekend eater, or like in moderation. And I'm like, that's stupid, sorry. That's just how I feel. And I feel like I need to feel that way so that people who think the whole in moderation thing works knows that it doesn't, and that it is not okay. Before I get any more heated, I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, you're very clearly passionate about it, and I appreciate you bringing it up. You also brought up cryptocurrencies. I've got to dive into that a little bit.
Sure, happy to.
What are your thoughts around cryptocurrencies?
Oh man, I've known about Bitcoin since 2011.
That's pretty early to be it.
I didn't actually invest $100. I didn't start investing until 2014. I started my first cryptocurrency in 2016 called Communicoin. Then I started another one called Cone. Both failed. I am going to be starting another coin called Vibes, where you can go to any of our shows through using Vibes. It's in process, but might not happen for a little bit.
Now, do you program it? Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I know it's okay. I don't. No, I hire
okay.
somebody to do that.
Is it all on Ethereum? Those two? No,
I would not build it on Ethereum. No, I would build it on most likely on the Cardano network. I really like Cardano a lot.
Why is that? Let me just poke in there.
Yeah, I mean, there is different reasons, but the main one, it's just a better platform, and it's not as expensive. It's way better for the environment. I mean, you want to talk about environmental things, you're not using all of that energy that takes to, I'm like hesitant in my words because I
no worries. Proof of work versus
proof of work versus proof of
stake,
right? Proof of stake, right? Anyways, I used to be way more involved in crypto than I am now. In fact, I was in 2018 when that big boom was happening. I was really, really involved, and I'm glad I'm not as much anymore. I still own, I would say that the majority of my money is in crypto. I think that for me, it feels like a safer play than US dollars.
Now, this is not stablecoin, right? You're not like holding all of your money in USDC and calling it crypto.
No, it's mainly Bitcoin. I really do believe in Bitcoin as itself. I mean, I don't think people get this yet in the main kind of like on the masses, but you can literally at this point buy anything in Bitcoin, anything you want, because PayPal adopted it. So you can literally buy more. This is actually true, what I'm about to say. You can buy more things in Bitcoin than you can in any other currency. More than American dollars because of PayPal, and then other things like other countries are using it too. You might have to fact check me on that. I don't know if that's fully true, but I'm pretty sure it is. It just makes sense to my logical brain that would be true. Would you agree?
Well, I've never used Bitcoin on PayPal because initially you couldn't withdraw it, so I was a little skeptical there. But if it's a wallet, I mean, you could send Bitcoin to it, and then if you're able to buy or convert it into whatever the local currency is at the time of transaction.
You can buy Bitcoin directly from your PayPal also.
Yeah. Initially, you couldn't send it out of PayPal though.
Right.
But I think that's changed, or maybe it's in the process. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, either way, you can still use your Bitcoin funds to buy things from PayPal.
Yeah, that's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, so I think that's that alone feels like just over time, it's going to be the thing. I mean, it's more cost effective. It's better on many levels. And especially with this whole movement in America happening of like the free American, I'm not sure how tapped in you are to that, but like essentially like Republicans are now not all, but the majority of them are into this whole, being extremely sovereign. And that is tied into cryptocurrency because it's decentralized. So they're matching up more and more, I think. And especially as like,
so you think politics will gravitate to make it favorable to adopt cryptocurrencies?
Oh, the more division there is, the more Bitcoin will thrive because, in this sense, I would say, right? Because like the division now is essentially like, I mean, like at its core, it's about freedom. It's about like, do you believe in sovereignty or collectivism? And I believe that that's kind of like the main. It's really not about Democrat versus Republican anymore. It's sovereignty versus collectivism. And so, sovereignty and collectivism both are supported with decentralization, which crypto is, right? But kind of like big money, big banks only supports collectivism, not sovereignty. So I do think that, that's kind of in its process, right? I think that there are also, there's a lot, of course, it's not just about Bitcoin. I hold other coins. The one that I'm most excited about is pre-search. I think that pre-search is going to be widely adopted.
All right. I think myself and the viewers need the 2-minute pitch deck on
sure. So
this one. I've never heard of it.
So pre-search is basically like Google, but it is a search engine, but every time you search, you get part of the coin, and you can make up to 3 coins per day, basically. So that's how you mine it, is by searching. There's some really cool features, like you can have you can use the coin to be part of an ad. Like right now, if on pre-search, if you search Spotify and you click on the first top ad, I've actually staked that out and it goes to our Spotify playlist. So like you can leverage your pre-search as assets to bid on top ads. And then if you get outbid, you actually get the pre-search money back. So you're not losing it. It's a really cool way of doing things. Also on pre-search, you can search on Google. So you can choose your search engine on pre-search. You don't have to use pre-search. You can use Google.
I assume you don't get paid if you use Google.
I don't think
so. Is that fair?
Okay. No, I think you have to use pre-search. But pre-search is a decentralized engine. So it's also promoting like decentralization among searches, which I think eventually, especially as this whole political movement is happening of really like highlighting sovereignty versus collectivism, which then in turn, like it gets people who are sovereign thinking, all right, how do I be sovereign? And then it gets them down this whole rabbit hole of, of jurisdiction and just certain laws, common law, civil law, all that stuff. And so I do think that pre-search is kind of like a nice pairing with that. And so, yeah, I would say that like, if someone was like, what's one coin or one thing that you have faith in that you've backed myself, I would say that pre-search would be that one.
And it's PRE?
PRE, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm Googling it, or coin geckoing to be more precise.
I wonder where it's going to be when this comes out. Right now, it's I think about 20 cents.
Yeah, we're at 19 cents.
It just went up high. It was at like 3 cents just a couple months ago.
Yeah, I would say you've had a good 2 months. You're up 620%.
That would be great. I just got it.
Okay.
I just got it. Just found out about this. I knew about pre-search for a while, but I just put my money into it once I like saw it.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, it has a total, you could tell I like crypto too, but
sure.
Has a total supply of 500 million. It seems kind of similar to BAT, or Basic Attention Token, from the Brave browser, where you get paid for ads.
More for, to my knowledge, would be more for like storage, right?
I think that would be something different, maybe like Filecoin. But have you ever heard of Brave browser?
Yeah, of course I have Brave. Yeah.
Okay. So, sometimes you'll see ads at the top and you can connect it to a wallet and you get paid in BAT tokens. And creators, if you create a web page and somebody visits, you get paid as a creator of that content.
Right. So it's not like that because there are no creators. This is literally just
searching.
Like getting paid. It's like literally, if you could say that Audius is kind of like the crypto of Spotify or SoundCloud, which I love Audius, and it's becoming that, but really slowly, and maybe not, but who knows? But I still love Audius. Go check out Audius, by the way. If you're a musician and you don't have your music on there, I highly suggest it. Yeah, I would say this is more just like, and maybe like BitClout is like that for Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I would say this is just like that for Google. So it's like a way that a human can use their search engine and get rewarded for it. And I do, and that type of simplicity, I do feel like has a long-term benefit.
Yeah. Well, I always like a project that has a actual use case, Audius, for example, versus things that are just coins to be coins. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting rabbit hole that we just went down. How has your life changed? How have you shifted gears to be more online as far as connecting? What changes have you made to adapt?
Yeah, so obviously touring was a little harder. I think, and that's where the bulk of funds come. I think that I really took this pandemic opportunity, or I say pandemic opportunity, this pandemic as an opportunity to get myself to a certain place online, especially on Spotify. That then, look, I went into the pandemic and I basically was like, however long this lasts, I'm going to work super hard every single day so that when I come out, 20-hour days sometimes, so that when I come out of it, I feel good. It's like, all right, this pandemic was great. Obviously not great for people in general and the sickness and all that stuff and the fear mongering and all the things. But, I want to do the best that I can with it. So I had started a label called High Vibe Records in 2017, which I didn't really do much for. Pandemic comes around. I'm like, all right, I'm going to really push with this label because that's going to help Equanimous. That's going to help me grow and all these things. I hired some employees, put some money in, did the whole thing, ended up working a ton on it. And it really did help Equanimous. And it's helped a lot of artists. And so that was my shift, was into High Vibe Records. And now as things are, touring is starting to open up, all these things are starting to happen again. I'm now in the process of like really delegating the label and really giving it to some experts who are better than me at being industry people, and that's, I think, a lot of my just vibe of what I believe in is like, things should be the best they can be. If I can't make it the best that it can be, I should hire someone who can. And I think that's what a lot of successful people do, obviously. But yeah, I guess there was like something about being an artist or my pride where I was like afraid to have someone else mix my song or something. And that's just dumb, because that's just between me and myself. In fact, most people probably think that I mix every single one of my songs. And I don't. I mix some of them, a lot of them, but not all of them. I make there, a lot of it's coming from my heart or my ideas. But yeah, I guess there's just like, once one can let go of the idea of needing to do everything on their own and they're like, all right, I'm going to like delegate and be cool with that. I feel like that's a kind of like a key or a lock to success in certain ways.
Was there a shift in your mind or an insight that you had that enabled you to delegate and kind of let go of things, give up control?
Yeah, it was like, I don't want to do some of these things. I did not want to sit there and enter in a ton of data into websites and stuff. I just didn't want to do that. And it actually started with, I started on this site Submit Hub. Like we started, I was like listening to music and just like so many songs a day. And I loved it. I was like, wow, I'm getting paid to listen to music. And eventually it was like, all right, this is too much. I don't have time for this, so I hired someone to listen to music, for me, for one of the accounts. And she loves it. She gets to listen to music and get paid for it. So she loves it. I'm empowering someone to do something that she loves. And I get to only listen to some of the best tracks that I want to hear. And I get them sent directly to me. So like, this is now we've even delegated that further, but this is an example of like, I guess that shift. I think a lot of it just comes from desires. I'm very desire based, and I believe, there's a lot of teachings on the Kabbalah I believe in, and I don't know if believe is the right word. I guess it is. I honor, or I guess I appreciate, and I I guess I like some of those beliefs too. And a lot of them have to do with kind of this idea that a human is desire based. And then when they get their needs met, then they get their cup full, then they can bestow, they can give that, and they can move on to the next desire. So like on a very small level, like you think about having, you know, shelter and food. It's like, all right, well, we desire shelter and food. And then once we have those things, shelter and food, we don't really desire, like I'm assuming you live in like a home, right? And you probably don't think every day, I wish I had a home. You don't desire a home because you have it already, right? And you've probably at some point had friends over your house, or you've let someone stay there, a family member maybe. You've been able to give shelter to people. You've probably given food to people before. You've been able to give food to people because you have it. Well, if you keep going down that kind of chain, right? You get your needs met, then you get love, then you get community, whatever it is, then you get a sense of spirituality. Then once you have a sense of spirituality, you don't desire it anymore. And you can give it, you can teach it, you can help other people with it. And that goes all the way to essentially like the desire to give. It's like, okay, well, you've gotten what you need, and now one has the desire to give, to bestow, they say. And so that's that type of philosophy is kind of how I see. If it's taken in the wrong way, it can be seen as very selfish or hedonistic, but that's just not how I see things. I do see things as being desire-based. So I guess like once my desire was to not do those things and to do other things, then I developed a desire to delegate that. And so I just follow that desire. So I'm very desire-based. I totally believe in the emotional guidance system of just listening to one's internal emotions and internal intuitions and feelings and their mind, brain, you know. Like I said, I used to grow up thinking a lot. Now I think in my body. And that's where my home is. My home is in my heart and in my body, my physical body. My home is not in my mind like it used to be. So, yeah, I guess desire would be the answer to your question.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
That was a lot. So I do. No, I appreciate it. I really do, because I think it's important to be able to pass things off and to leverage other people's skill sets, and you can't control everything and create the best product.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
You know, like Elon's not building the rockets himself or the vehicles himself, you know, but like he's leveraged the best in order to make the best. So, speaking of the best, well, the best performing track on your Spotify, you alluded to earlier. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how, I'm assuming you're talking about Cellular Upgrade?
I welcome love. I welcome harmony. I welcome all of the beautiful things that are meant for me. I welcome light. Let it surround me. Grounded and rooted in the earth, we align with the highest frequency.
Yeah, Cellular Upgrade. The We Saw Lions remix is the one that is definitely doing the best. Whenever I go out and play shows, you know, people come up and they sing the words, which I love. It's such a cool experience. Feel very grateful for that. The first time I heard that song, it gave me shivers. You know, when I heard the completed version, like I got that kind of goosebump feeling, you know, when you know something. It was magical. I think I cried. That song, I made that beat a while ago in 2017, I think, maybe 2016. I had only released like one or two Equanimous songs. And I was hanging out at the time with someone named Heather, Activation Vibration. She goes by Activation also. Awesome human being. Check her out. She also has a pretty good following online. She's got a lot of like really loyal people who follow her and her teachings. And we just kind of been friends. We were like, hey, let's, you know, I was like, you got any cool things? Or maybe she was like, you got a cool beat or whatever, however it happened. And I think it was like, we should do a thing. It was like, we should do a thing. And she was like, okay, I'm going to record like an upgrade, And she just like stream of consciousness just recorded this thing. And she sent it to me. And then I was like, hey, I have this beat. And I chose that beat because I made that beat when I was like almost living with her at that time. We were friends. We were kind of living in this big community house. And I just paired them together. And I was like, all right, this sounds cool. Put it out. It did pretty well. The original Cellular Upgrade did pretty well. Then a group, well, okay. There's a singer named Hannah, used to be Hannah Christensen, got married now, Hannah Lou Woods. I've always loved her. She wasn't a huge artist, but just she has this one song called 100 Hearts. You know, it touched me so much. Every time I listen to it, I almost cry. I mean, you have songs like this that just like might not be huge, but they mean something to you. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, heard this years ago, maybe in 2013, I want to say. Feels right. Anyways, maybe even 2012. I don't know. Around that time, I'm going to say around that time, 2012, 2013. And heard this song and I was like, wow, what a song. And I never forgot that song. And I was working with, years ago, a label, Jumpsuit Records. Very grateful for them. They were one of the first labels that put out my music, run by the Polish ambassador. David Sugalski is great. Love him. And he kind of sent us an email being like, hey, if you have any artists that you want to help get on the label, you can take a small cut, whatever. And I was like, well, there's this one singer that I just love. I should see what she's up to. I never even met her before. Hit her up. Hey, how's it going? You want to put out an EP with this label? Blah. And they were like, oh, cool. Thanks for that. Blah, blah. They did end up putting out an EP with them. They later put out their recent EP with us at High Five Records. But anyways, and I was just talking to her, and she's in this group called We Saw Lions, you know, with her and this producer. And I was just like, they were asking me, I think, how they can kind of get their name on the map. I was like, well, I just put out the song with Activation. No idea how you could do a remix for it because you're a singer. But I guess if you want to sing on top of it, that could be kind of cool, you know? And they were like, oh, we'll take a stab at it. And she, I guess, had she's, you know, not as much in the spiritual space as we are. And when I say we, I mean Activation Night. And she, like, I guess, had some kind of a profound download or something with these lyrics. And when I heard her sing these lyrics on top of what we had already done, I was shocked. I was like, this is coming from you. It was just so profound. And yeah, it was, you know, the highest frequency is love and just vibing off of that. And super, super just profound lyrics, beautiful voice. She's got an unbelievable voice. And then the other half of We Saw Lions, Dave, who's an excellent producer, kind of took what I already did, make it a little bit trappier, you know, mixed her vocals in beautifully. And then we just kind of like, and then rearranged some of Activation's kind of downloady, codey vocal things. And we have this track, which the four of us really did, you know, relatively equally together. I would say on the musical end, you know, obviously like on the label end, we've, you know, done quite a bit for it, but, you know, on a musical end, like we all kind of added what we added. And I'd say the main, I was going to say most important, but really like, I think what gets taken away from that song is her voice, you know, is the essence of her voice, which is really beautiful. And people can connect to that who are not necessarily in the spiritual space. So when they're listening to these spiritual lyrics and these things that are kind of like up-leveling their being and they're understanding on a cellular level, hey, I am a body of cells, and listening to these type of affirmations with this tone is actually putting my state in a different vibrational state. And that's going to affect my life. I think that those who picked up on that intention and who picked up on that vibe really can connect to it. And I think that a lot of people and more people are connecting. In fact, from when we're filming this and recording this podcast, yesterday that track had more plays than it did any other day. And it just keeps growing. So that's kind of how that all came together. When I first heard it, I told you I like got shivers and all this stuff. I was like, and then of course I was like super nitpicky with the mastering engineer. I was like, no, we need it this way. We need it this way. You know, I really wanted to make it sound great. Yeah. And then there's a whole story with the image stat and everything. I could talk a lot about that song, but I think for now, I think that's like the essence of how that song came to be. And, you know, it really has a strong energetic foundation, like a universal energetic foundation in that song. And I noticed that happens to be the one doing the best right now. And, so I've wondered, like, hey, does music that really has energy put into it, is that going to be felt and received from others? And I think the answer is yes, it is. There's an answer to that question.
Nice. Yeah, it is a beautiful track. It has what I would say is a longer intro before
definitely, yeah. And we've thought a lot about that. Like, should we put out a radio version without the intros and the outros? But I think that it kind of makes it. It's kind of like what it is, What do you think about that? I'm kind of curious.
Well, I mean, just from a listener's experience, and I haven't if I was to give a real analysis, I would, listen through a few more times with a pen and paper. But yeah, I think it kind of brings the listener along, kind of sets the foundation, the intro that is, before it opens up into the track. And I mean, yeah, I think the intro was on the longer side. That's why I said it.
Yeah, it is on the longer side.
It gives once it opens, it's like, oh, finally, But like, if it just opened on the first bar, I wouldn't have that feeling. Right. That's like, all right, we've arrived. We finally we get somewhere, and now we're going to go. So, anyways, maybe it's that anticipation that makes that makes it, I don't know, a little sweeter.
Yeah, a lot of it could also just literally be the codes that this woman activation, Heather, is holding, because she is, I mean, you talk about one of these beings that you meet and you talk to and like crazy magical stuff happens. She's one of those, I could go into some crazy stuff, but all I'll just say is that, like, she certainly holds a code that when she communicates that code, it resonates in other humans. And that's what I think is happening in this intro here.
Interesting. Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, everyone's probably receiving it differently.
Yeah. Well, let us know in the comments what you think.
Yes, I would love to read those comments.
Yeah, another track that kind of stood out to me. All right, well, there's a few, but we're kind of wrapping it up, so I'll try and keep my
I want to say one thing really quick.
Yeah, please do.
Before you get into this other track. Here's a good example of activation's kind of like crazy spiritualness, is that just in this moment, I was just like checking my voice recorder thing to make sure that the timing was working. And it said 1:11, an hour. It was like literally like 1 hour, 11 minutes and 11 seconds when I checked it. And it's like, oh, what crazy number, I'll make fun of, I can make fun of that number thing all day. Like, oh, you saw the number 6? That's crazy, because 6 minus 1 is 5, and I have 5 fingers on my hand, so it's super aligned. Like, there's things like that where it's like, whatever. But when it comes like that much, like that, I'm just saying, like, literally, like, there are crazy things about activation, okay? And she's all into the 111 stuff. And I say that and I happen to have that brain thought to look at the thing right at 1111111, 5 ones. That's what I'm talking about, as far as kind of that like feeling of magicalness.
Nice.
Anyways, I would love to hear what you're going to talk about for that.
Yeah, well, there's just a few other tracks, so yeah. I'll pick one of them, and hopefully I'm saying this. Pumbaa. Did I butcher
Pumbaa.
It? Okay, good.
I love that track. Yeah, Pumbaa.
Cool. Let's talk about that one. First of all, why do you love it yourself, and what makes it, stand out in your mind?
Sure. So I recorded that track probably 3 years ago with Evan Hatfield. I was like, Evan, let's make a track together. Evan and I had lived together for about a year, but we never actually made a track together. And we were both, he was like building his own brand and I was building Equanimous. And I was just like, hey, and he played, by the way, he is like you know, I wouldn't say he's a super big artist, but he's definitely known, and especially in like the West Coast scene, for playing sitar and saxophone, mainly sitar though, because he's unbelievable at sitar, and he kind of like puts sitar and sax in like house beats that are pretty cool. Obviously, this track is not a house track; it's a bass track. But he comes to the studio, very intentional. We're going to do a sitar track. He's like, "Hey, my sitar's in D minor." I was like, "All right," or maybe D, whatever it was. F is either D minor or D major. I was like, "All right, well then we got to make it in that key." So we made it in that key. Really, I was just like play. He just said play, and I think I had this beat of like something simple, and I just like play, and he just recorded a bunch of stuff, and I was like, all right, play a bunch of saxophone things. He recorded a bunch of saxophone things, and then I was like, all right, awesome, I'm gonna make a beat with this. Made a beat with it, shelved it for a couple of years because I wanted it to be on my album, and I knew I wasn't gonna release an album for a little bit. Revisited it, kind of just put the things together. I mean, the bulk of that track is really just kind of sitar and sax. You know, yes, there's like that tabla hit, dun 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 dun, and that's like the main melody. And I probably had that. I did actually. I had that while he was recording over it because he mimicked the melody and stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how that came together. Just a fun track. And at the time, I was just like, "What?" It was one of those things like, "What are we going to call it?" And I just said Pumbaa because I think I'd just seen The Lion King for like the 20th time. Is that his name, Pumbaa, from The LionKing?
Yeah, I think one of them. I don't know who is
Jamie, can you look
Pumbaa the warthog?
Oh, yeah, the warthog. Yeah, Pumbaa.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Pumbaa, right?
I think so.
And so I was like, oh, that'd be fun. But I was like, oh, we'll rename it later. And then I was nervous. I was like, I'm definitely not going to name that because I just thought in my brain that Pumbaa was some kind of like a racial slur in some way, like not to, you know, anyone specific. I didn't even know what. I just like, to me, that's what I was like, oh, that in some way. And
it might be offensive. Yeah.
It might be offensive to someone. But I Googled it. It's not offensive to anyone, it doesn't look like. So I just kind of went with it.
Nice.
Yeah, and it kind of has that grit, like Pumbaa. And so it's like, it kind of just
has a rhythm to the name itself.
Right. So that's how that one came to be.
Cool. Yeah. Now, when you're making a track, how do you know it's done? Like you said, you shelved it for years. Like that's a commitment. Like I was worried, you know, if somebody said, I'm going to shelve it for a couple of years, I'd be worried if it ever comes out, you know, if somebody said that to me. Yeah.
Well, you know, that's like, I definitely have tracks that I've done years ago that have not come out. I have tracks that I've started years ago that I know will come out. Some of those, like, okay, the Knock Knock EP, Cloud Waves, that was an EP of songs that I wasn't going to put on my album that I was like, that weren't finished. I was like, what am I going to do with them? They're still good enough. They're good. They're too good to throw out. Mm-hmm. They're too good to not release. And that's why I pitched them to Knock Knock. I was like, hey dude, you want to like clean these up and get on them? I'm pretty much done with them because I don't know what to do. Or I just like don't want to. I'm working on other things now, but they're like really good. Do you want to collaborate with me? And he was like, yeah. So once he added his things to it, that reignited my inspiration. Then we got in the studio to finish it.
Nice.
So I don't know. That kind of doesn't concern me as much, mainly because there's so much. There's always going to be way more music that I haven't released than I have. Even like me doing a voice note, there's so many tracks where I'm like, oh, that's a sick hook, and I'll like write it down. Maybe I'll release it someday, maybe I won't. But I can't stress out about that because then it's just going to prevent me from doing the ideas in the first place. You know, I think every artist has their own relationship to this phenomena that you just brought up.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what to call it, but the tracks that don't make the cut, that are abandoned, that are kind of just left out or deleted, or, you know, it's sad, but like, how do you keep yourself, you know, knowing that the next track is going to be fire when this track, you just worked on it all day and it just went nowhere? Well, or you know, what do you do when you get frustrated?
I will say I might not be the best example for this.
Okay.
Because if I've put in that much time into a track, even if I don't feel like it's gold, I'll still release it. I just won't do it under Equanimous. That's why I have Bliss Looper, in fact.
Okay.
So I have my Bliss Looper project, which started with like, hey, these tracks I'm not going to release as Equanimous, but I still want to put them out.
Nice.
So Bliss Looper, right? And I was doing live looping anyway, so I was just like, oh, I'll just combine them into one project. But then Bliss Looper, people started to like actually, and it turned into this whole thing. So now I'll do like these really chill piano tracks specifically just for Bliss Looper.
I see.
You know, I have a couple of projects that people don't. I have something called So Frickin' Chill, which is like an album we did in 24 hours that I released that. And this whole Ghost Beats thing is going to be very similar. Ghost Beats is going to be like beats that I've made that didn't make the cut for Equanimous that are still great for people to rap to as instrumentals, whatever, that should be out there, should be heard, will probably make some type of a profit anyways. So it's a win-win for everybody. Maybe I just didn't do the whole thing by myself.
Nice. And when you are, I guess let's go through like, when are you most creative? Do you work through the night? Do you get up early in the morning?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm most creative when I'm in the studio and someone else is the engineer, by far. That's when I'm most creative. When someone's like, here's an instrument, play it, and I'm going to record you.
Nice.
That's when I'm most creative. And that's what I love. And I've been attracting more and more producers like that. Like I said, Stoic. I have this 4-track EP that I'm really, really, really excited about, Stoic, which is going to be coming out this year at the very end of the year. Yeah, and I'm really excited about it because he literally was like, hey, do whatever you want. Just make the music here. And I had full freedom to just do whatever. And he was embracing that. When another engineer is supporting that, that's gold. There are certain engineers that like will support that, but they're still like, all right, now my turn. Let's, now let me play the piano and stuff. And that's great. And it works. And I love that. Also, what I like even more is when I can really embrace what I'm best at, which is playing the music. Not necessarily, I'm still good at like moving around the knobs and EQing things and mixing things, right? I would still consider myself very good at that, but not as good as others. And I want the people who are better than me at that to be doing that part because it's going to make the song better.
Nice. Well, that just circles right back to the delegation and leveraging other people's talent. I know there's a book coming out it's called Who, Not How. And it's about who's the answer to the problem, not how do I solve this.
That is very smart. And I love, love, love that way of thinking.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that is about it on my end from questions, but I want to make sure if anybody's listening out there and they want to look you up or reach out or connect, find more music, what are the best platforms for you and what are the best links or avenues to communicate?
Totally. So I'll just say two different ways. One is whatever music streaming service you listen to, whether that be Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or Amazon or whatever, Deezer, type in Equanimous, Equanimous, Equanimous. You'll see all my music there. I'm on all the platforms, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, whatever. And then if you want to, see me in my life and, watch me as I just go about my day to day, I am pretty active on my Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Equanimous Love, such as at EquanimousLove, Equanimous Love. If you type in Equanimous on Instagram, I will also show up. But yeah, that's me, Equanimous. And that's how you can find me on either platform. If you need to email me about a show or anything like that, you can do it through my label, whatever it is, highviberecords@gmail.com, or that email is public, so I don't mind that being out there. Yeah. Check out High Vibe Records too.
Great.
That's my thing.
And then last questions for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with me, the listener?
Yeah. This might sound a little cliche, but I just encourage everyone listening to connect as much as they can with their heart and their body. Because I'm going to make the assumption that most people who are listening, because most people are this way, are very in tune with their mind. And they spend a lot of their internal awareness and their beingness in their mind. And I just would encourage people to take the time. And it's not the easiest thing for some. It's a practice, just like anything else. It's a practice. But to take their time spending more of their internal awareness and their time and their energy and attention within their body. Just feeling their toes, feeling their fingers, feeling their arms, their hands internally, feeling their heart, checking in with their heart, checking in with their gut, and checking in with their mind, or from a more conscious place. And I would just encourage everybody to do that and find the love inside of themselves and follow that and act with love. And, you know, as Jackie Moon from Semi Pro says, everybody love everybody. And to really just do their best to be in their hearts and to love. And if they don't know how, to ask someone who does. Just like you just said about who, not how, which I think is really cool. That's my, besides looking up Equanimous music, I would say that is kind of the last 2 cents I would like to leave people with, is just to be in their body, be aware of their body, of their whole internal universe, and to live from their heart.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing. I think you're going to have to put out some sort of meditation series, because you changed your voice there at the end. I was ready to close my eyes, sit on the floor cross-legged.
Yeah.
So,
I can definitely slow things down.
You can get me there. Yeah, I bet. So really, again, I just appreciate your time, Nate. And thank you so much for just being an open book and sharing your music and some of the strategies, tips and tricks and knowledge that you've gained. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you for hosting people like myself just to share their message. And thanks for everybody listening too. I really appreciate you, and send you lots of love.
Move the way you want to move, do the things you want to do. If they judge the way you grew, don't worry. You've come so far to see yourself. No more dreaming on the shelf. You can live like no one else, so don't stop. We could have it our way. We could dream a new day. We could have it our way. We could dream a new.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.
Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music. You are listening to Freio Music.